So one of the main topics to start with at the moment in the field of neurodiversity in the workplace is this lack of appetite or like lack of prioritizing neurodivergent training. So I found, obviously, volunteering with neurodiversity in business, that more and more businesses know about it, but they're not necessarily investing in the training. And then through conversations I've had with CEOs and within NIB, it just seems to be down the list because obviously, like investments and budget and things. And I think the reason is lack of education or understanding of the immense benefits that neurodiversity training brings to the company. Um, and I think this is potentially, as a movement, where we need to start and focus on, which is spreading that business case for neuro-inclusivity. So the whole retaining your neurodivergent talent, like allowing them to be themselves and work at their best, getting the innovative, creative thinking from ADHD people, the detail-orientated pattern recognition from autistic, just for two examples. And I don't think companies yet understand how this will improve their bottom line and their position in such a competitive market. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's the non-tangible KPIs or the not making it more fact or figures based in a way. This, if you do that, the causality of a logical chain is missing in a way. If you do that, then this is your input equals that output. And I think maybe if we were to talk or replace neuro-inclusivity or neurodiverse workplaces with mental well-being and psychological safety, I think it makes it a bit more tangible. Because when I look at the current numbers, and I refer here to Germany because I've just recently researched those, mental health or stress-induced sickness or absence is number 3 in all of the absence courses. There's an 85% increase of mental well-being related sick days or sick leaves compared to last year. How many of those employees are currently struggling and suffering due to courses which actually damage their mental well-being? And I think if we were to make that switch, because neuro-inclusivity is not just aiming towards, including a marginalized group or having another process adaptation or another policy or something else we need to focus on. It's more so about understanding how can we create a culture, frameworks, leadership, enable employees within the framework of mental well-being, because what's essential for neurodiverse people is beneficial for everyone in the space of mental well-being. And if we were to talk a bit more about that rather than just saying, neuro-inclusivity, what the heck is this? What is autistic spectrum disorder? What is ADHD? I mean, our healthcare system unfortunately, we use terminology which is so complex. And if you need 5 minutes to explain what neurodiversity really is, there's a difference between hearing, understanding, relating. Relating is when I experience something similar. Understanding is that we talk technically, okay, your terminology makes sense in my head, doesn't mean that my head has the same understanding of your head. And I think if we were to say, okay, what causes the decline in mental well-being? Let's look at the things. Everyone can relate. It's the lack of recognition. Oh my goodness, lack of recognition. It's fear of failure. It's intransparent communication. It's unclear role description. It's ambiguity. It's the geopolitical situation which causes insecurity. It's the inability of middle management in a way to deal with ambiguity in their own role versus their personal beliefs. It's this generational differences where we can't reconcile different ages in the workplace and so on and so forth. And if we were to say everyone is affected by those things, but neurodiverse people struggle even more so when we look at things like lights, or sensory overflow, or
sensory.
no,
Yeah,
exactly, or no agenda in meetings, or these things. And if
yeah,
and that's, I think this is the conversation we should have. It's not so this should be your highest priority, not neurodiversity, not this fancy word. Your highest priority within HR should be, how can I increase mental well-being or stabilize it, because it's inclining. We have to
yeah.
raise back to zero, okay, increase baseline. And how can I, in a situation, especially in Europe, which is really uncertain, the market, the economy, all that, how can I make my company future ready, which requires of
Mm,
me to provide a framework, a culture in which we are able to express ourselves without being judged, without
yes.
being categorized, without, suffering from repercussions. I think that's the
Oh,
conversation we should have. And then it
that's
makes sense to them.
yeah. I love that you mentioned the terminology thing as well, because I think there's a struggle or a worry amongst HR people about getting it wrong, with all of these like language and labels and things. And what you've just described as the conversation we've had, which is what we're aiming to do. Actually, it's about inclusivity in general. So, with the goal being psychological safety, as we know, which is for any employee to know that they can go to their manager and ask for some form of adjustment that they think will help them work better. So, you can use, you're right, yeah, you can use the case of the neurodivergent person with sensory overload. So, um, ADHD, auditory. You'll get the best from me if I'm in a quiet space, not in a busy office. But that's not to say that neurotypical people don't also have things that will increase their work output. And this is where it comes back to making your company future ready. Because if you create a culture like that, it increases collaboration and comradity. This is part of my thing with pronouncing words, isn't it? Collaboration and knowing that you can ask for the right environment and have people know why. So it's about basically educating on that, letting people be themselves a bit more rather than fitting into this role. And then if they don't like fulfill the role, this is where the mental well-being comes in, where they're like, oh, I'm bad at this or I'm failing or whatever, instead of support. So yeah, you're right. Like inclusivity and psychological safety for everyone, and then that benefits neurodivergent people. So then you can
Yeah,
talk about that as part of it as well. Um,
exactly. Because what,
I think,
the thing about neuro-inclusivity, and that's within the word neuro-inclusivity, is that the ability to process information, to work, to perform, to be efficient, the level of distraction which we have, this is for all of us,
yeah,
independent of neurotypical and neurodiverse
yeah,
people. When you get distracted, we all suffer from procrastination. We all suffer from
yeah.
overwhelm. And we need to look, what you are saying is the enablement of employees to feel safe, to express how they perform best, and to see what can we do to get there. But then also, of course, it's the framework and the workplace and the management. So we talk always holistically. What is it
Mm,
that with easy adjustments, what can we do, and what
oh,
can lead us to feel more enabled and not scared? Because if someone is, managers
mm,
and management in general, this is a complex environment there, and there's so many new regulations all the time which they have to
mm,
get familiar with, and they have to do, and it's becoming even more complex in the workplace. And I do think that
mm,
when we throw words around which are always relating to
yeah,
mental disorders, in a way, mental speaking, that's a disorder, many people don't know yet how to deal with it. So if you were to be confronted with something and you have a role expectation of yourself, and then you get confused and you maybe get scared and you don't know what to do, what's your natural reaction? You pull back and you're like, oh, I don't know what to do with this.
yeah,
So I think it's more so about enabling all of the different stakeholders to have an open conversation. There's a simple rule which I always like to point out: never assume anything, rather ask. The first thing
yeah,
should be a question. The second one is a statement. Never start with a statement first. And also help companies understand who want to make adaptations. It's not about investing big money and big companies and assessments. It's more so about what can we do today? Circle of influence, circle of control. What is that I can do as an employee today? What is that I can do as a manager today? What is what I can do as a company today to make the adjustments today, which will provide a better future tomorrow, and then we see what can we do tomorrow. I think we overcomplicate things. We pull in people with long contracts, then we have this analysis for months and months and months. I mean, that the pace is so fast that some of the companies I've worked for, next week was a totally different world. So how can you, the adaptability and the ability and the enablement, I think this is what we should focus on. And it starts with basic understanding of what's good for me. How do I perform well? What's the market need? What is the company I'm in? And then reconciling all of that and make it tangible and practical. And I think
this again, like language, you've hit on it there. Instead of like disorders, which means problem, so an added problem to solve, instead of like problem, it's improvement. How can we improve our company culture? How can we be better? How can we create the conditions to get the best out of our workforce? Not a problem to solve, but a opportunity to be better, and therefore that does give you a competitive market advantage in the end. That's the bottom line. And you're right, there's this other belief that it costs, like with these massive contracts and these adjustments are going to be like really expensive, and the truth is like they sometimes can be free or like literally minimal cost. And there's a thing at the moment, isn't there, of companies investing in like long contracts with neurodivergent consultancy firms. It doesn't have to be like that. Instead, it can be like a shorter training course whereby we impart the knowledge of how to be more inclusive, how to support the employees, how to create an environment where they can go to the office. And that just requires training for middle management and awareness amongst employees as well, that it's okay to ask for help. And that's so much shorter. That's not massive contracts. You can always offer additional support. So if there was like an employee that was neurodivergent or had mental health disorder and the company or managers were struggling, then of course you can bring somebody in to support that individual. But as a company, all it requires is just a period of training, because then they've got that knowledge to take forth, and then they're the ones that implement that into the culture rather than outsourcing it to these consultancy firms.
Absolutely. And then it also can develop from within. It's always good to be a co-creator in a space where you determine the culture. If it's the thing, you can have the perfect framework, you can have the perfect policies, you can have a lovely setup and all of that, individual signatures, whatnot, you can have it all. If you don't have people who live it, and that's just the ultimate issue. And how can you change culture? Cultural change, organizational change. I've been within HR for 11 years. It's always that. We always change. There's number one theme, right? Development, change, because people do develop and change. I think what happens is that when you bring in a partner who is really professional in the way they set up things, I don't have no questions here. It's just that you need to help people create their culture within their framework of influence and control. Otherwise, it makes no sense. And this is, I think, where it comes to become important, because mental well-being, psychological safety always starts with you. Good leadership always starts with you. I am of the opinion you can never learn to be a good leader. You can do thousands of trainings and you will still be bad at leadership if you don't become a good leader. You can become one.
Yes.
You cannot learn to be one. And that's with the cultural thing as well. And I
so
think
that
this
comes
is
from
where
a
it comes
deep
in.
understanding, doesn't it? It's like a deep, so it's the affective side, the actual deep understanding of I want to be, I understand that me being a better leader means taking this in within myself and like, as you say, identifying with it rather than it being like a training course or a tick box thing. Like the leader
You can
has to,
never, yeah, you can never fully integrate something which is foreign to you.
yeah, yeah. So again, training has to be adapted around this, I think. And then the
Yeah.
benefits are just insane. If you create a company culture like that, not only are you going to retain your current talent, but you're going to attract top talent as well because they'll want to work for a company like that, which then saves money in the whole like employee life cycle and onboarding. And the benefits are just immense and something that aren't taught. It's so funny, isn't it? Like not taking action is resulting in figures like you just said, like the 85% increase in like absence due to mental well-being, whereas that's being talked about more. But the solution is to create this culture of understanding, and that not only does that minimize employee absence because of like stress, burnout, overwhelm, but it also allows them to be their best as well. So it's just like twofold, threefold, fourfold in the benefits that you get from doing this. So the, it's the
And
framing of
also,
it.
it's a framing of it, but also, and this is of course not sugarcoating it, because when you look at organizations who have no neuro inclusivity understanding, they don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Neurodiverse people, they face issues and challenges, especially in being led or from the leadership, especially in the way they express themselves, especially in the way they ask
Mm.
questions, especially in the way that they say it as it is, not with bad intent and not to blame anyone, but it's just how they operate. And I think it's the it's a loss for the company if you let those people go. You know, people always try
Yeah.
to see, okay, what's the benefit for all of the employees in total? And I agree with you, absolutely. You can really raise not only baseline, there's so much more potential
Mm.
if we really provide a framework. But also, I think never underestimate the power of some of those people within the organization who are
Yeah.
willing to change, who are willing to go the extra mile, who are willing to think outside the box, or who are great inspirational leaders. I've experienced that a lot when an
Mm.
inspirational leader leaves the company, the ripple effect of that, or even in other industries where you have very important experts in their roles who are on the spectrum, because
Yeah.
from my experience, I know they are. And then they have issues in being heard or understood in the way they operate because the
Yes.
leaders they don't know. They think
Yeah.
some of them might feel attacked when it's just the nature of help me understand. Because if I don't understand, it doesn't align with my value proposition. And then I will not be able to fulfill it in the way you want me to do it because I still have so many questions. Now, when
The,
these people leave with an expertise. Mind you, they learned it on the job. There's no such way
and
as
then
I
they
learn
take it
it.
elsewhere. Yeah.
Yes, and it's the
The-
massive loss of corporations simply due to the fact that they did not understand the difference in behavior. Because that's the thing.
the
Differently thinking equals always different behaviors. And the behaviors are in social.
Innovation, creativity, like agility, flexibility, all of
And
this. Yeah.
you say all the positive things, but it's also that they will step on your tiptoes eventually, that they ask the hard questions which
Oh,
you might
yeah.
not have the answers to, that they might fall out of line, that they might interrupt, that they might want to stand up and fidget and you don't know what to do, that they might have high energy or low energy. And that's the thing with neurotypicals, and that's now a category, and I'm choose that only for the simplicity of the conversation.
Yeah.
It's it's this, oh, I don't know what to do with it. Oh, I
Yes.
don't know
Like,
what to
yeah.
expect. That scares me.
And then
So
the neurodivergent people end up, so the ADHD, okay, so when I get excited, this is a perfect example of what I'm just gonna say, like because they don't understand the conditions, neurodivergent people then get bad repercussions like being disliked, not being understood, being punished for their natural behaviors. So like me interrupting you there, if I did that in a meeting, that might be viewed badly. Whereas in reality, it's because I'm excited about what you're saying. And with ADHD in the brain, we have a lack of filter of like blurting out thoughts. That's just part of the condition. Whereas if people understood that, and the other thing that we do is we try and shift and shape and fit to try and fit in, which is exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting to try and play by those rules, and you will not get the best from neurodivergent employees when their mental energy is going into just trying to appear normal and just trying to fit in. Like, for example, me putting all my effort into not interrupting or something, like I'm thinking about that. I'm not present in the meeting and taking things on. So again, the lack of understanding or awareness and then the repercussions that we get because of it. But that's twofold
Absolutely.
again. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also that I've noticed that, and I've seen that in my professional career. I've seen it in my environment of neurodiverse people heading into conversations with middle management where they're only primarily being criticized because of who they are, in
Yeah.
a
Oh
way.
my God.
And
Criticized
that's
because of
so
who you are. Yeah.
soul crushing, because and then they also say, but is what I'm the content of what I'm saying, is that wrong? No. It's how you say it, is how you behave it, is when you say it. You can't say it in those setups. And maybe that's too simply put, but that's of course something which I think is for, especially for neurodiverse people, is what adds onto the mental well-being and the feeling safe in an
Yeah.
environment, which is really detrimental to their health. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. And then also, I think if, because NeuroSynergy, we talk always about synergy, the brilliant part of that is that when we find the differences and then we bring it all together, because companies are not about just individuals. We are a team, we are coming together for a cause, we need to work together. And then how brilliant is a
Synergetic.
world in which
Yeah.
neurotypicals and neurodiverse people know exactly what their strengths and weaknesses are. And you have a manager who is able to see and use the synergies. When some neurodiverse person, employee, is on the peak of their creativity and thought pattern, and they mapped out this plan, and then they get distracted or they run into overwhelm or paralysis. How amazing would it be if then there was a team that said, hey, let's put this into action, because that's exactly my expertise, make
Yes.
things happen. And then someone goes in and said, that's actually brilliant, because I always wanted to develop
Yeah.
this particular part. And then you keep momentum going. And I think, more so, one thing is about providing leadership, perfect frameworks or condition, well, not perfect, but adjustable frameworks and conditions, but then also have a team interplay where people know exactly how to work together, how to pick each other up, how to remain on a target, how to have an open conversation about those things. I think that's actually the brilliance of being able to communicate freely, openly, in a way, without being scared. And that, of course, has to be learned naturally. We don't really know how to do that
Yes.
nowadays. But if you are able to
So
learn that, that's actually
yeah.
something which can not only bring a benefit to you in the workplace,
Yeah.
ultimately in every relationship you have,
I
this can be
know. And it
beneficial.
starts with the training, doesn't it? But
Yeah.
that's why we keep coming back to the word synergy, why we talked about neurosynergy, because like it's, oh, Joe's really good at spreadsheets. I'm really good at marketing or creative things. So like if there's a project on and I've been given this project, if I know the skill set of the other employees, it means I can go to them and be like, hey, can you help me with this? Which means the final product is going to be better. So you've got that synergetic relationship among the workforce, amongst the employees, of this collaborative spirit. So instead of it just being, here's my project, I'm good at this bit, but that bit I'll struggle a bit more at. I'm like, I'll get this bit done and then I'll go to Joe who can help me with this. And then the final product is going to be better because you've got that synergetic understanding. And as you said, it takes a little while, but it starts with the training, which filters down, and then people learn. And there are ways of doing this. So you could even do like
Yeah,
psychometric tests about skill sets so that you know, and things like
yeah,
this, depending on what companies open for. But synergy, that's where we came
yeah.
to that. It is about, yeah, the
I think
synergetic relationship in a company.
absolutely, and I think I would take it one step further, not saying it's training. First and foremost is understanding.
Oh yeah.
And I know, you know, if I understand something, or if I experience something in a way, I always love
Mm,
experiencing it. Because again, hearing, listening, understanding, experiencing makes you change,
that's
makes
the
you
effective
become an,
part.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think, yeah, this is the first thing, really trying to experience and understand what it really means. And then you have that in mind. And then, of course, learning and adapting and being trained properly. Yeah,
And then when you do it and you see the benefits, that's when it's
yeah.
effective because you've experienced it. So it's just it's more simple than it sounds. And I think um that's where we should end on this topic at the moment, which just leaving that message of it's more simple than long contracts and expensive adjustments and all of this.
And it's a
D-
necessity because we don't talk. I think the
yeah,
awareness I'd love to the big takeaway I think I'd love to have today is it's not more so about neurodiversity and make another complex integration or increase complexity. It's about the current
sim-
needs
yeah,
to focus on mental well-being and being aware that this is something which needs to be on your agenda and that neuro inclusivity.
it's part of it.
Not only that, I think it's the lever or the most pivotal or critical element which you should look at because that has an effect on everyone.
Yes. Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just one of our topics. I'm excited to talk about the next part as well, because obviously this is such a wide like subject, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
But as we say, it's just starting with that understanding of it's not as complex as you think, and the benefits are just insane when you get it right. So it's education, awareness, and then experiencing and reaping the benefits of putting this into place. So yeah.
Yeah.